Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of Regulators. This week there were 10,802 alerts, and it's really nice. I like the regulators being on vacation. I mean, it sounds big, but like 7,000 of those are always CFPB consumer complaints. The regulator of the week is Canada, and not because they have a Securities Proceeding Advisory Committee, SPAC, which shows up every so often in my Regulators SPAC feed. But because they decided to more than double the funding to address homelessness within the country. But also because the Canadian Securities Administrators published guidance for investment funds on their disclosure practices that relate to ESG, particularly the ones that actually refer to having an ESG strategy. The goal is to avoid greenwashing. The topic of the week is federal funding. Obviously, we just got the new Inflation Reduction Act passed, so that's money. And keep in mind that pretty much any bill that ever gets signed is government money raining from the sky. And it just keeps going. So this week, the states have been celebrating their big RAISE grants. RAISE stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. And it really started out of the 2008 financial crisis. Back then they were called Build Grants and Tiger Grants. Also, of course, those are long acronyms for something else. Anyway, it was expanded recently, and now Colorado, Arkansas, California, Vermont, Louisiana, Michigan, and South Dakota announced that they got millions to improve roadways, teacher salaries, and more. Similarly, the Department of Health and Human Services announced a number of funding opportunity announcements stemming from the National Institute on Drug Abuse's Racial Equity Initiative, and it's a whole host of opportunities to study equality in medicine and health when it comes to drug abuse. Moving on to compliance, FINRA 4210 was delayed again to April. I mean, at this point, FINRA should just have set it to the exact 10-year anniversary of the very first proposal and call it good. The SEC and the CFTC put out a joint proposed rule on Form PF, which is the big reporting form that hedge funds fill out. The commissioners are mostly happy, except some of them are worried that it's going to cost too much money to implement. And my dear Hester Pierce is worried that now the government is going to have so much extra data, it should be really careful about protecting it. I happen to agree, which also gets us into data protection. And California was at it again. First of all, the California Privacy Protection Agency Board voted unanimously to oppose a federal data protection rule that would supersede state laws and not be as strong as the CCPA. Maybe it's because they know it would mean that all of their hard work this week in starting a formal rulemaking process for their proposed amendments to the CCPA would be for nothing, and they'd be out of a job. Another interesting bill on the table in California is to change an obscure law that holds TV manufacturers strictly liable for the functionality of their TVs, and it cannot be waived. Until now, the bill, which had hearings this week, would provide an exception for third-party apps, i.e. Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and other cloud-based services that the TV provides access to. Speaking of third parties, CISA put out a new cyber toolkit intended to help states protect the U.S. election system. So hopefully the states will actually use it and will be such a smashing success at preventing hacking, we won't ever have to worry about false claims during an election cycle. One can dream. The FTC is currently exploring rules to crack down on harmful commercial surveillance and lax data security. Right now, they're looking for public comment on the harms that are coming from commercial surveillance. And finally, the Saudi Central Bank released the results of a study finding that digital payments surpassed cash payments in the kingdom, which is pretty impressive. The 2025 goal is for 70% of all payments to be digital. That's it this week for Regalytics. Seriously, come get a subscription because fall is coming and there are going to be a lot to changing and a lot to stay on top of, and we really do make that much easier for all of you. See you next Wednesday.